And squeak, 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 folks, here we go again. Welcome to the Squeaky Wheel. As always with me, my very good friend, the President, Lawrence Gervais. Folks, I'm Ross Memphis Pambrun, the captain. Lawrence, it is Save the Rhino Day. I imagine that was something that's been on your mind here for the last little while. Cinco de Mayo is very closely coming upon us. And folks, I can't stress enough, it is Nurses Week is coming up. And having some experience, having been in the world of nursing many, many, many moons ago before my career in the fire department, and having so many nurses who have been still a part of my life, folks, make sure you say thank you. You know, this has been a trying number of years. And if you imagine the challenge that it's been for healthcare workers, they might need our support for the next little while. So, Lawrence, welcome to the show.
Yeah, so don't forget Star Wars Day, May the 4th, right? That's a very important day.
I can guarantee, Lawrence, there's one day of the year that my wife and I go out of our way to try and pretend like the other person may have forgotten, and it just happens to be May the 4th as a result of my anniversary. And if I can get her to forget that is the day, then I get to hold that over her for a whole year. And it has happened. It has happened in the past, and it's often, I think, happened more to me.
Do you dress up like Yoda or Chewbacca or anything like that? Some role playing happening?
There's absolutely nothing wrong with dressing up like Princess Leia, Lawrence. In this day and age, we can all take our turns participating. But yes, I think, you know me, we've talked about this before. I think I'm a bit more of a Star Trek guy than I am a Star Wars guy. But when I was growing up, oh yeah, who didn't want to be Han Solo? Who didn't want to have a blaster in order to ride, across the galaxy at hyper speeds? But since then, I think I'm more into probably wearing Spock's ears and Captain Kirk's shirt since then. But folks, summer is coming slowly upon us as spring continues to be warming up in the ground. I'm starting to see flowers slowly emerging. The sun just seems like it's brighter and brighter. I actually went to Costco yesterday with a friend because this is the time of the year where you can get a fabulous array of plants in order to start stocking your greenhouse or to hang outside. And though here in Alberta, you always have to be a little bit conscientious of the snow coming down, this is that time of the season. The energy's rebuilding.
Yeah, speaking of marijuana, I noticed a lot of bud places when I was driving home with the little girl from the ballet yesterday. I was like, wow, it's all over the city. It's incredible how many bud companies there are selling it. But that's just the sign of the times, right?
I could probably walk 20 minutes from my house and hit 3 or 4. I find that a bit unusual. I mean, you couldn't seem to get to that as many alcohol stores. But, for all of our listeners who are in Alberta, of course, there's almost an ease within our province because of the allowances when it comes to, running the AGLC in the alcohol stores and these bud stores now. But when you come from some of the other provinces that are still provincially controlled, they can't get good whiskey like we can here. They seem like they're mandated based on how the control happens within their provinces. But here in the gunslinging province of Alberta, yeah, you can pretty much find anything at any time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't do any of that stuff, but definitely makes people happier than all the Karens and those other guys we've seen in the past couple of years. All to it.
So for all the Karen listeners out there, obviously we're going to start getting a few emails based on that. May not necessarily
all
just
the Karens, be because actual Karens, yeah.
Yeah, they're going to be sending something to say, hey, what's going on? Why are you talking about my name? Pretty soon we'll be getting the Will Smith slap saying, keep that name out of your mouth. Thoughts go out, as always, folks, to the families in Ukraine and the challenges for the Russians and their community. This is a world offense that seems to be happening, and how do we continue to navigate it? But I also want to take a moment, Lawrence, to say, our thoughts and prayers are with the Yellowbird family. Here in Alberta and across our great nation, and as the music industry, we lost a generous, a fabulous musician, father. I think his father of 4, Shane Yellowbird, passed away at the age of 42. And I know, very familiar with his song Pickup Truck. Barefoot on the Blacktop came out, and he had just great energy. So for the Cree members and families in Musqueam and the music community, our thoughts are with you. Mm-hmm. Whole bunch of things, Lawrence, that jump up every week. We get these great emails from the AlbertaMétis.com and Voyageur Voice. So, folks, make sure you look it up. Audrey Poitras golf tournament is coming up on June 17th, and it's going to be at the Legends in Sherwood Park. Now, I've never actually, I don't think Lawrence played in her golf tournament. Ours is coming up on June 23rd, but have you played in that the big provincial one?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's very well organized, and every hole there's an activity while you're waiting, so that's a lot of fun too.
Like jigging, or because
I've
tried.
A puck, there's jigging, there's so many different things. Yeah.
How fun is that?
Yeah. And I mean, tons of volunteers, and they have a huge luncheon after, and really good prizes. Region 3 does our golf tournament, might be a little bit less, but
it's a little smaller, yeah.
Yeah, but definitely ours is good too. But hers, definitely is a one that to attend. If you want to play in the Métis Nation golf tournament, that's the one.
Folks, follow our socials because, yes, ours is coming up on June 23rd at Apple Creek, and there is ways in order to get yourself registered. Don't forget that in August as well, the annual General Assembly is coming. And we've talked a little bit about it, Lawrence. How are we doing when it comes to the planning? Because this is big for our province, right? This is what brings everybody around. And there's lots of conversation, I know, at the provincial level about the event.
Well, I mean, our last provincial council last week, we had it actually at the Grey Eagle, and everybody had seen the resort and had viewed it. Grey Eagle's a little tough to get to, navigating through all the roads now, but not like what it used to be where you could just merge and you're there. But definitely makes you go around a little bit, but pay attention to those road signs. But once you're on the property, it's a big area. The event center is so huge. It's going to fit thousands of Métis and RV sites, as well as outdoor areas. We basically have the whole hotel to ourselves too during that weekend. So yeah, we're pretty excited about it.
Oh, and yeah, you're right. The Grey Eagle does a fabulous job. I've been there for many concerts. Beautiful location, and it has been. I remember during the early part of the pandemic going to. It was essentially like a drive-in concert. You sit in your car, you couldn't get out, and we were watching Gord Bamford play. It was so fun. It's not the way you want to go to a concert, sitting like in a drive-in movie theater as you're watching the singer and the artist up on stage. But it was a way to get out. It was a fun evening to get out. So yes, folks, make sure you mark your calendar. I think that starts around August 5th. And I know
August 4th to the 7th. So 4th to the 7th, Thursday to Sunday. And that Friday is a rodeo that we're planning in Balzac. So we're pretty excited about that over at Al Gerling's place. And certainly it'll be a fun event. That's a ticketed one. So if people want to go, please make arrangements. Call our office, 403-569-8800. And and book your ticket.
Boy, geez, I hope they have a good band. Oh, well, Lawrence, thanks for bringing that up. Yes. There's a good chance that we're going to get lots of, groups from down here in our region to play. But yeah, thank you. Memphis and the Ground is going to be playing. And folks, when you hit rock bottom at the end of the day and you're really bored and you just can't seem to find one more thing to look up Memphis and the Grand, Grande, because we just released our song, The Game 7 Man. And it's essentially, the reason we wanted to release it now is as the playoffs are taking off, it is a fun story with a Stomp and Tom kind of Merle Haggard kind of feel to it. And we are, capturing the energy of when two people have met at a hockey game and the celebrations that happen through the playoffs, Game 1 to Game 7. So it's a lot of fun, but make sure you look us up. When I read the Voyageur Voice, there's always little tidbits of information. And one thing that I want to focus on is they have an area was called Métis Stories of Hope. And folks, the provincial office wanted you to connect with them, sending them, fun, positive stories from your experiences within the Métis community. And you can send it at storiesofhope@métis.org. But if you look up albertamétis.com and you go look up the Voyageur Voice, if you don't get the emails, then you'll find a little bit more about what they're looking for. There's education that's coming up on understanding disability, community resources. Folks, this doesn't just have to be limited to the individuals who live, right in Alberta. Doesn't matter where you are, look up these resources and try and find the same resources or build those resources within your own community. These are all great tools and great education awareness. There's lots of summer jobs for youth. that are happening throughout the province, and then you can find more information about that. And Lawrence, we were talking about Batoche that's going to be coming up. So what's happening there? I know I had such a great time attending and playing last year, but that's coming up around July 23rd. How quickly are they getting that organized and getting that sorted out?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and maybe this will change by the time this airs. But I hope that they get in contact with M&A and for at least that one day where we have the Alberta Day, so we can all make plans to be there and support and be visible to the Métis community at Batoche on that Saturday. So, yeah, Batoche has new, I guess, organizers, and they've certainly are letting us know that the RV sites are already booked. So that's a big sign that it might be a big crowd. I'm not sure who's booking them, but I know the area. It's a very large RV area, and to have it booked this month, this far ahead, is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if all of a sudden anybody just wants to attend, I guess unless you're bringing your own generator and they find space for you, there's no way of connecting. But hopefully they start to share a little bit more information about how it is that we're going to manage the volume of people, because people do want to gather.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's changed over the years. So now we have chuck wagons, and there's a separate band area too. There's some softball tournaments. There's so many things happening during Batoche that attracts a lot of people now.
Look it up, folks. It is a fun time, and especially if you get to go to the National Historic Site of Batoche. They had great people there who were giving educational. There's a tremendous amount of artifacts, and the history is well displayed. So I can't speak highly enough about my enjoyment there. The information came out that one of the researchers, I'm trying to figure out exactly where she's from, has got copies, Lawrence, from the National Archives that were provided 20 years ago of Lac La Ronge footage and the residential schools. The reason I bring this up, of course, try to every week, is that this has been the new awareness that's continuing to create the conversation within all Indigenous communities, and the relationship with colonialism, Catholicism, how Christianity and the acknowledgement by the Pope. I'm going to be interested to see how they use this new footage and what we're going to learn from that. Does it help create closure for the people who have attended? Because in this case, now some of these seniors are saying, yeah, as they look at this footage, that's me in that picture. Does this continue to create more discussion amongst the community, or is this more just validation?
Well, I think we're going to be finding bit by bit chunks of this all over our community across Canada. And certainly the communities are going to have to, be braced and kind of be ready for what they see. And because they might see themselves in those photos, or things might just strike, a nerve, and might take them back to those places again. So, yeah, they have to certainly be careful of that on how they approach it, but we'll see how it goes.
You're right. I guess all families have to acknowledge that. And you're right. How do they become triggers in order to create stress or any depression? And these are part of our mental health and our mental wellness programs that have to continue to occur. This has affected a lot of families' lives over many years, right? The families were torn apart as a result of these residential schools. Speaking of sort of being kind of torn apart too, I was just reading about, there was an author, David A. Robertson, who he was informed by I think it's one of the Ontario school boards, that his book, The Great Bear, which is a bit more of a fantasy tale, was sort of pulled and was being reviewed because it had too much culture in it. Now, as I've read a little bit about it, it's the story back home after their first adventure in the barren grounds. Eli and Morgan each struggle with personal issues. Eli's being bullied at school, tries to hide it from Morgan. Morgan has to make an important decision about his birth mother. And they travel back through this journey to Missoula to visit their animal friends. And again, it's a time travel book. what point does it seem unreasonable, or who makes those decisions to pull books from the shelves? This doesn't seem as though, like, what's going to be in these books that makes it such a threat?
Exactly. That's maybe they have certain standards and they're living by them from the 40s and the 50s. I don't know on how they judge books, but this is 2022 now, and reconciliation is so important to. And these are teachable moments. Like authors, when they put that stuff in books, it's for a reason, right? It's to educate. It's to immerse people into the culture. And it's really sad that they want to put an obstacle in front of that.
Well, yeah, the board's Indigenous Education Department thought the book contains too much culture and ceremony. I mean, doesn't that sound ridiculous? Here we've talked too about the plight of families who want to name their children based on their, an Indigenous name that is symbolic to their family and the government goes, well, we don't really have a character for that on our keyboard in order to put that sound or that vowel or that language. Oh, okay. Well, does that mean you're going to make the change? Does that mean you're going to work to try and support the Indigenous community for this recognition? Or who gave you the right to come up with the pattern in order of how you recognize names? I find that's, a conversation that seems regular. We run into this all of a sudden. The government.
But is the author Indigenous? Like, is the author Indigenous?
Yes. I'm trying to remember where he's from.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because, there's certain aspects of ceremony people certainly want to kind of keep real true ceremony. Like, there's some aspects of Sundance that people don't really talk about publicly. Like, there's certain things that happen in those ceremonies that the elders are kind of advising not to share, and I can kind of see that. But if that is the case, but if it's all about smudging or it's teaching some culture, then it shouldn't be a bad thing.
Oh, and that's a good point, actually, Lawrence, and that's, I guess, part of why our conversation works. The idea that if you're trying to teach about a culture or ceremony that you're not involved with, have history with, maybe you've just done a little bit of research, but you're not acknowledging that, then it's almost misappropriation, right? Now you're just trying to capture somebody's attention for something that you don't have familiarity with. Apparently, he's a member of the Norway House Cree Nation and currently lives in Winnipeg. So I'm eager to see what happens with his book, how those decisions get made, who sits on the Indigenous board in order to determine whether or not these books are Indigenous correct enough. Because if all of a sudden the people who sit on that board have no connection with the Indigenous community, perhaps the board should be reevaluated.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking if it's ceremonial or something spiritual, you definitely need that input from the elders, right? Before you even put it on paper, because they can help guide it correctly.
Well, and then that brings me into our next part of our conversation that I wanted to ask you about. So the Hamilton mayor in Hamilton, Ontario, wants to reinstate a John A. Mcdonald statue, and I think they had recently had one torn down. And his comment being, John A. Mcdonald was still our first prime minister. 100% agree. And I don't dispute the notion that he's saying, well, perhaps we can identify on these statues through the awareness, become more educational. And I don't like the idea of people just tearing statues down. I think it needs to be part of a conversation, but we have to have the conversation about what was negative with the role that the decisions somebody made, who was impacted. It's easy to look at who was impacted positively because people just seem to throw a statue up. Well, we also need to acknowledge the negative impacts that occurred. So I understand where this mayor is coming from. Should resources be allocated now in order to put up what may have be now perceived as a historical negative statue? Or do you identify on the statue and the history saying, this is the role this person played, but they also it needs to be identified the harm that they contributed to? Or are we just wiping out history? And so I understand what he's saying. Now we just need to figure out how do we recognize? Because, you look into anybody's history, maybe there should never be another statue.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we take a militant viewpoint and we just want to obliterate absolutely all the history, all the bad stuff. But then what happens 10 years later? What happens 20 years later when it starts to happen again, right? And that's what we have to be very careful of, is that we need to be re-educating ourselves every 10 to 20 years because that statue is no longer there or exists. Right?
Yeah.
And rather than possibly removing the statue, think about ways that that's a teachable moment. So keeping the statue there, putting a plaque beside it that tells the real history behind that statue. That's probably more significant because then that lasts for many generations, right? But yeah, if you definitely remove something that's historical figure, you definitely need to re-educate or come up ways to do that because you're just obliterating from history. And history repeats itself sometimes, right?
Oh, yeah. And all of a sudden, someday we're going to get to the point, it's like, who was our first prime minister? Nobody knows. How, there's never been teaching, there's never been education. How do we say, here's where this person started, but here's some of the harm that may have occurred as a result of the decisions that they made at the time? And how do we learn?
And here's what he said in Parliament. And here's, we look at provincial Hansards and what the people in the old days used to say about Indian folk, right?
Yeah.
So we can't erase all that. It's there in history.
Someday it's going to be, remember that time that Ross threw a snowball at Lawrence? What a monster Ross is. Well, Lawrence, I should have thrown 2 snowballs at you if I remember correctly.
Yeah, but then I caught them both, right? Because I have quick reflexes.
Is that what happened? Yeah, now I remember. Yeah, and then you threw them back at me. So you're the monster, Lawrence. There you are. Yeah.
Right.
I was only tossing them to you. You turned around and threw them back at me. Lawrence, the light is on. Leighton, send the signal. Send the bat signal. It's Indigenous Plant Conversation. Lawrence, what do you got for us to talk about today?
Well, I have a plant called I practiced this. Amiskoekaskawa, which means mint, right? So mint leaves, a wild mint. And it's good tasting. It's also called the Beaver Plant. And you'll find these things, they grow about 10 to 14 inches tall. They're purple and light mauve flowers, are small bill shaped which appear around the stem. The stems, flowers, and roots are used in teas and seasonings. And it is found throughout Alberta swamps and near lakes. So if you ever feel like you need to relax and relieve from tensions of a busy day, it's just like regular mint. You make this in a tea and sip it slowly, and by the time, your stress goes away pretty naturally, right? And that's the whole point. Sorry, I was thinking something else. And then you might be interested in this. It's also used for halitosis, and if you drink it tea morning and night. So just so Ross.
That's why we're a radio show, because of our bad breath. I don't necessarily know if that's my concern. The idea that it's relaxing, clearly, then you must eat a lot of mint, because you were saying earlier, the other relaxing medication that the government now endorses is not one of the stores that you necessarily run into. Folks, for all of you listening out there, Lawrence's new best idea is, if you start a mint store, you heard it here first, Lawrence and I want 50% of the profits just for bringing it up, and we're willing to promote your mint store. Because clearly, I don't know if it's the same mint that you can make mojitos out of, but I am familiar with wild mint, and you're absolutely right. There's a beautiful, just the oils that when you touch it, that come off on your hands. It's fabulous.
Yeah.
You know what we should do, Lawrence, is just to brighten up the office, is get one of these wild mint plants, and this way you could dab a little bit of mint behind your ear every day, and that way it just sort of brings out that nice sweet taste and sweet smell when you're walking around.
Yeah, there's no dabbing with me, just so you know.
It is no doubt. It's just straight white pot. I'm excited, and I don't know if we brought it up, but the Stampede has picked the royalty for this year. Now, they've actually only going with one Indian princess, and they're actually only going with one Calgary Stampede Princess, rather than there used to always be the princess and her part of her entourage. I think the Stampede Queens as well. But this year it is Stampede's First Nation Princess. Now I know I'm going to get this wrong because I struggle with generally most of my Cree, but
it's a Blackfoot. It's probably Siksika, isn't it?
Oh, it could be actually. I didn't know where she's from, but Sikapanaki Lowhorn has been. Hopefully, we can throw a picture up there of as the First Nation princess, and then the 2022 Calgary Stampede Princess Jenna Peters. So and it's when the Stampede is choosing and looking for this representation, it has to be connection with community, the comfort and familiarity with working with our animal athletes and horsemanship. So always excited. I think this will be this is going to be another fun year where our communities are feeling a little more comfortable as we're coming out of the weeds. Events are starting to happen. We still can't turn a blind eye to following our responsibilities, but this is going to be fun for us, Lawrence. I know I got lots of shows lined up, but we always have a good time during Stampede.
Yeah, this whole masking thing. I'm very careful. If there's a lot of people around, I definitely wear it. Like we were in the theater yesterday, and me and the little girl, we just wore it the whole time, right?
Yeah.
But if we're out in the lobby amongst walking around people, we kind of take it off, and we're getting a little bit braver with that, right, as we go along here. But
we're still following the rules, but yes, there's a comfort for everybody. And if there's people, whether I'm wearing a mask or there's other people, I don't question them. They're not affecting me in any way. So I'm 100%. Before we get to sports, I don't know why, but the world of the avian flu seems to be really challenging a lot of the economies when it comes to bird management, because as this flu goes through and starts to affect the bird population, they end up having to put down so many birds, which is going to change how we care and manage that industry. But at the same time, here we'll see 800,000 birds be put down. It's somehow rotisserie chickens are still cheaper than buying your own chicken. Now, I was doing a little bit of reading. Generally, rotisserie chickens come in about 1.2 kilograms, whereas if you buy a chicken, it's about 1.4 to 1.6. And what I was learning was the reason all the rotisserie chickens are around the same size is that way when the cooking cycle occurs, that they've been cooked through. Now, nobody admits to the fact that, rotisserie chickens are a lost leader. They don't really make money on them, but it gets you into the door because what's not to like about that nice salty chicken bird? But Costco itself sold 106 million rotisserie chickens. That's just Costco. That's crazy. But yeah, what a perfect animal it seems.
Well, if there's one species of animals who could rule the world, it would be chicken. With the population that large.
Yeah. Once they start to take over, once they get a hold of Twitter, things are going to change. Yeah, once they take that over from Elon Musk.
Maybe that's the plan. We don't know. Yeah. Right? Maybe they control AI.
I did. It's been a long time, but I did enjoy Chicken Run. That's got to be 20 years ago when that cartoon came out. But that told quite a tale. And let's close, Lawrence. Sadly, my Raptors lost out.
Yeah.
Now, folks, I don't think I'm playing spoiler by any means. I'm pretty sure you've already all figured out that the Raptors are out of the playoffs. But, that Joel Embiid for the 76ers, he played with aggression. Well, it came back to haunt him, where in that last game, Pascal was playing with some energy, and he went for the hoop and caught Embiid right in the head, and it sounds like he may have cracked or fractured his orbital bone and gave him a concussion. So Philadelphia might lose their number one player, and I gotta thank our Raptors for playing as hard as they did. But they
last game
they
was
went
terrible though.
They struggled there in that last quarter, but they went further than any of us anticipated.
Well, further than me and you. We don't play basketball.
Well, I'm pretty sure that if I'm pretty sure, Lawrence, that if you and I were shooting hoops, you and I would hit probably 60-70% of our of our 3-point shots. I have to assume.
You think so? Okay, we should try that.
Yeah, folks, we're going to try and get some
film it.
pictures of that. And the Blue Jays, the NHL playoffs are coming up. Make sure you root for your team, folks. Blue Jays are doing great. George Springer, who's been, helping carry some of our wins, though he has a sordid past of playing for the Houston Astros, he's definitely helping our team now.
Well, he is definitely the garbage can incident, and he's part of that. But definitely, I think over here he's kind of he's away from that, that. And I think people probably bring it up too when he goes, especially when he goes to New York or Boston.
Oh,
but he also has these injury issues, right? He's had it in Houston, and he's at the Jays and missed 30 games last year, right? So we hope he doesn't get injured. I mean, he's a good player, and he's keeping up there with the home run leaders right now. I think he's in the top 10, so he can. Yeah,
everybody's watching him a little closer, right? So let's hopefully, he continues to bring that strength and that good energy, and hopefully, the building positive energy. Someday, Lawrence, they'll be talking about us going, do you remember the Pemmican incident? I don't know what that incident will be, but someday they'll be reminding us about that. So, folks, from Leighton and Devin behind the scenes, from the captain, Ross, Memphis, Pambrun, from my very good friend, Lawrence, the president, Gervais, thank you as always for checking in on us. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on the rest of our channels, look us up on our website, find out information, continue to send us emails and ask questions about the things that are happening, and share what's happening within your community, and we're happy to share them here on the Squeaky Wheel. So from all of us here, keep the wheel squeaking. The Squeaky Wheel is brought to you by the Squeaky Wheel Company, co-hosted by the President, Lawrence Gervais, from M&A Region 3, and the Captain, Ross, Memphis, Pambrun. Our program is broadcast from Calgary, in Region 3 of the Métis Nation of Alberta, which is part of the historic Métis Nation homeland. We also acknowledge these lands are the traditional territories of Treaty 7, Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, Tsuut'ina, and Stoney Nakoda, with whom we share this land on the basis of our historical and ongoing relationships. You can always reach us for comment about our programming by email at tsw@thesqueakywheel.ca, or find us on our website, www.squeakywheel.ca, and our socials. For our comments, it is our focus to recognize all of our First Nations and Indigenous friends, share connection with Métis settlements, and listen to and show respect to our Métis brothers and sisters and families. Here at the Squeaky Wheel, we give thanks to our elders for their guidance and to Mother Earth for her time she allows us to be here and share her bounty. From all of us at the Squeaky Wheel, Tansi.